I was pulling the last bag of groceries from the trunk when my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. It was my daughter. Not a call. A text. She almost never texted. "Mom, just so you know, we're doing Christmas at your place this year. Already let everyone know. Can you do dinner for 28? Raymond's side is coming too." I read it standing in my driveway in Barrie with a bag of clementines in one hand and my keys in the other. The temperature was -9 and dropping. I read it again. Already let everyone know. Not. Would you mind? Not. Is that okay? Not even a question mark anywhere in the whole message. 28 people. My house, my kitchen, my hands. I set the clementines down on the hood of the car. I thought about everything I'd been carrying since September. The knee surgery in October that still made stairs a negotiation. The physiotherapy appointments every Tuesday. The fact that I hadn't hosted more than 6 people at once in 4 years and had been perfectly happy about that. I thought about the roasting pan I donated to the Sally Ann last spring because I told myself those days were behind me. Then I typed the calmest thing I'd said in years. "That's a lot of people, sweetheart. I'm booked through the holidays. You'll need a venue." I hit send. I picked up my clementines. I went inside. The chat went quiet for 40 minutes. I knew that particular silence. It's the kind where people have moved the conversation somewhere you can't see. What happened next took me 3 weeks to fully understand, and the worst of it didn't come from my daughter at all. It came from a family group chat I'd been in for 11 years and barely opened anymore. A message that was meant for a different thread. 41 characters that changed everything I thought I knew about what my family saw when they looked at me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back, because the context matters. My name is Claudette. No, wait. I should tell you the name people actually know me by. Everyone calls me Teddie. Short for Theodora, which my mother chose from a book she was reading the week I was born, and which I spent the first 20 years of my life resenting. I'm 67 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom house on a quiet crescent in Barrie, Ontario, and I have lived there for 31 years. My late husband and I bought it the autumn before our youngest was born. He passed 6 years ago. A stroke, quick, the way he would have wanted if anyone had asked him. He didn't leave me rich. He left me the house, a reasonable RRSP, and a garden that has never once done what I wanted it to do, which somehow makes me love it more. I have 2 children. My son lives in Calgary and calls every second Sunday, which I appreciate more than he knows. My daughter lives 20 minutes from me, which is close enough to feel like family, and far enough that we don't accidentally irritate each other. Her husband. I'll call him my son-in-law because that's what he is to me, for better and for worse, works in commercial real estate. He is the kind of man who uses the word leverage at dinner. He and my daughter have 2 children, 7 and 10, who are the absolute lights of my life, and the only reason I have tolerated certain things I should have addressed years ago. Here is what I had done that I thought was love, and that turned out to be something more like slow erasure. 6 years ago, when housing prices in Barrie were climbing fast and my daughter and son-in-law were stretched thin, I told them to come and stay until they found something. My house was too big for one person. I moved into the sunroom addition. It sounds odd, but it's actually lovely. Its own entrance, its own bath, its own quiet. I gave them the main house. I never drew up a rental agreement because it felt transactional, and the whole point was that we were family, not transactions. The property taxes were in my name, around $8,500 a year, paid in full each December, no drama. The homeowner's insurance, my name. The utilities were reimbursed, mostly, in the first 2 years anyway. After that, it got sporadic, and I stopped mentioning it because bringing it up felt like something my own mother would have done, and my mother had used money the way some people use a leash. For 6 years, I had lived in my sunroom and paid the taxes on a house where my daughter's family walked around as though the mortgage had simply vanished and left them the deed. They stopped saying your house somewhere around year 3. After that, it was just the house. Then it was home. Then, gradually, almost gently, the word "my" started appearing. My driveway needs to be shoveled. My furnace filter needs changing, Mom. Can you call the guy? I let it happen. I told myself it was just the language of people who'd settled in. I told myself I was being generous, not invisible. That Tuesday in November, standing in the driveway with my clementines and my -9 fingers, was the first time I thought, I have been invisible so long I stopped noticing. My son-in-law called that evening. He almost never calls directly. Usually my daughter handles what she calls the family logistics, which is a term I have learned to distrust. Teddie, he said. He always starts with my name like that, a little firm, like he's chairing a meeting. I think there's been a miscommunication. I don't think so, I said. The message was fairly clear. The kids are really excited about Christmas here. They were counting on it. The children can be excited about Christmas wherever Christmas happens, I said. What they can't do is plan it in my kitchen without asking me. A pause. You're not still having trouble with the knee? I noticed the word still. He was filing something away when he said it. I didn't know yet what the folder was called. My knee is fine, I said. My calendar is full. He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Okay, Teddie. I'll have her call you. She called the next morning. My daughter has her father's voice when she's trying to manage something. A certain warmth that goes a little too smooth, like good butter over a crack. Mom, I'm sorry I didn't ask properly. I should have. Yes, it's just. You've always done Christmas. It's your thing. We just assumed. I know you assumed, I said. That's rather the point. Are you upset with me? I thought about it honestly. I'm not upset. I'm just not doing it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Raymond thinks you've been off lately. Since the surgery. I set my coffee down very carefully. Off, I said. Just quieter, more tired. It's normal, we're not criticizing. Who is we? She moved past that. We're just worried. You're out there in the sunroom by yourself a lot. Dad's been gone 6 years and you never really. She stopped. Started again. There are some lovely places, communities, where people your age. Sweetheart, I said. I'm going to stop you there. The line went very still. I'm 67, I said. I had knee surgery. I am not confused. I am not lonely in the way you're implying. And I am not interested in communities for people my age. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying, I said. I'll talk to you soon. I hung up and stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the backyard. At the snow coming down over the garden beds I'd covered in October. At the cedar tree my husband planted the year we moved in, and which was now larger than either of us had anticipated. Raymond thinks you've been off. The phrasing was careful, clinical. It had been rehearsed or something close to it. I didn't sleep well that night. I sat up with a cup of tea. I let go cold and I thought about my husband. Not with grief exactly, more with the particular ache of wanting someone who's good at reading rooms. He would have caught it faster than me. He always said, I gave people the benefit of the doubt past the point of sense. The next morning, I got a text from my sister. She lives in Sudbury, and we talk every except the kind of relationship that survives on birthdays and moderate effort. The text said, heard you're not feeling up to Christmas this year. Hope you're okay. Maybe a change of scenery would do you good? I stared at it. I had not told my sister anything about Christmas. I had texted only my daughter. I called my sister back. She answered on the second ring, cheerful and a little too smooth. Who told you I wasn't feeling up to Christmas? I said, a pause that was half a second too long. Oh, your daughter mentioned it in passing. I think she's just worried. What exactly did she say? Just you've been struggling since the surgery. That you seemed confused about the plans. Nothing specific. Confused about the plans. I thanked her and said I'd call her soon. I hung up and stood in my small kitchen for a long time, confused, off. Maybe a change of scenery, communities for people my age. Every word had been placed by hand. They were not the words of a worried family. They were the words of people rehearsing something. That afternoon, the family group chat, the big one, with Raymond's siblings and my daughter's university friends and a few people I'd met once at a shower, went quiet in the way chats do when someone posts something and then deletes it. I almost missed it. The notification came and went in under 2 minutes, but I'd already opened it. My daughter had posted to the wrong thread. Okay, everyone. The plan for Christmas. Aunt Sharon opens, soft and concerned, talks about how Mom's been struggling. I bring up the idea of assisted living as coming from the doctor, not us. Sounds less aggressive. Raymond has the documents ready for after dinner. Keep it gentle, keep it loving. She won't want a scene in front of the grandkids. He'll walk her through signing. Once the house is in our names, the financing works. I read it once. Then I took a screenshot. Then another. Then I read it again. The way you read a thing you need to fully believe before you can respond to it. The documents. After dinner. She won't want a scene in front of the grandkids. They weren't planning a Christmas dinner. They were planning a production. With a script, a timeline, a stage direction about my grandchildren, and a set of legal documents waiting in a drawer somewhere. And every piece of it was designed to move around me. Not with me. Never with me. Because they'd already decided I was the obstacle, the old woman who didn't understand what was good for her anymore. Once the house is in our names, the financing works. There it was. Underneath the brochures and the gentle concern and the worried sister in Sudbury. They needed the house. For financing. My house, the one I'd paid taxes on for 31 years, the one my husband built the garden shed behind with his own 2 hands, the one I'd opened up out of love 6 years ago and had been slowly, quietly, tidily erased from ever since. I didn't cry. I noticed that I didn't cry. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time and I felt something settle in my chest that wasn't anger exactly. It was more like clarity. The specific clarity of finally understanding where a pain has been living. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. I should tell you about Gwen. Gwen Stafford has been my lawyer and, more to the point, my friend since we were both young mothers volunteering at the school book fair 25 years ago. She is methodical and dry, and she does not waste words on comfort when what you actually need is information. I told her everything. I read her the message word for word off my screenshot. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Teddie, the deed to the house. Whose name is it in? Mine, I said. Just mine. It was never changed, and they've been living there how long under what arrangement? 6 years, no lease. No written agreement of any kind. Nothing. Then, under Ontario's Residential Tenancies Act, she said, they're occupants without a formal tenancy. Depending on the arrangement, there are specific notice requirements. But the short version is, you have legal standing to end this. It's not complicated. It's not dramatic. It's just the law. I let out a breath I think I'd been holding for most of the autumn. There's more, she said. Have you thought about a trust? I hadn't, not specifically. You put the property in a trust, she said. You name your grandchildren as beneficiaries. You set the terms. You can live in the house or rent it or leave it empty as you see fit for the rest of your life. After you, it passes to the grandchildren. And crucially, there is nothing left to sign over to anyone because there's nothing loose anymore. The moment someone puts a document in front of you, you can say, it's already in trust. The deed is not yours to give. My grandchildren, of course, yes. How fast can you do it? I said. Come in Thursday, she said. Bring the deed. I also called my son that evening. He's in Calgary, and we don't always share the smaller dramas, but this wasn't small anymore, and he deserved to know. He listened without interrupting, which is something he's always been good at. When I finished, he said, Mom, I'll come if you need me there. I don't need you there, I said. But I'd like you to know. Is there anything I can do? Be patient with your sister, I said. She's frightened. That's real. It doesn't make what she's doing right, but it's real. He was quiet for a moment. You're more generous than I'd be. I've had longer to practice, I said. I want to tell you something about that week between when I found the message and when Christmas actually arrived. People assume that when you discover something like this, you immediately want to confront it, to call and cry, and demand an explanation. I understand the impulse. I've felt it before. But I've also lived long enough to know that a confrontation made in the hot part of the feeling almost always gives the other person a way to make it about your reaction instead of their action. I let them think I didn't know. My daughter called twice. I was warm and normal and said very little about Christmas, which I think she read as me softening. My son-in-law sent a text asking if I wanted him to pick up extra chairs. I said that was thoughtful of him. My sister called from Sudbury and asked if I was feeling better. I said I was feeling just fine, thank you. They were probably congratulating each other in some other chat I couldn't see. Probably relieved. Probably finalizing the documents. I went to Gwen's office on Thursday morning. I sat across from her at her desk, in that office that smells like old paper and decent coffee, the same desk where we'd handled my husband's estate. And I signed the trust documents. Everything. Every brick of that house. Held for my grandchildren, Maisie and Oliver, 7 and 10, until each of them turned 25. I could stay in the sunroom for the rest of my life. I could rent the main house. I could sit in the garden my husband started and grow things that didn't do what I wanted. But no one could ever hand me a document over a Christmas turkey and take any of it, because there was nothing left to take. Gwen prepared the occupancy notice as well. Proper legal notice. In Ontario, the specifics depend on the circumstance, but she had it drawn up clean and proper, dated, sealed, and ready. I could serve this quietly, she said, before Christmas. No scene, no audience. I know, I said. You don't have to walk into this. I know that too. She looked at me across the desk. You're going to go. They plan to do this in front of my grandchildren, I said. In my house, with an audience of people who are supposed to love me. I looked out her window at the gray December street. I'm not going to let my grandchildren remember Christmas as the day their grandmother was walked off her own property without a word. I want them to see something different. Gwen sighed, but I've known her long enough to hear the respect in it. I'll be there by noon, she said. As your guest. Come hungry, I said. There'll be food. I should tell you what I haven't mentioned yet. The part that makes the rest of it, as my husband used to say, come around. 34 years ago, I was a young woman with a culinary certificate from Georgian College, a second-hand set of knives, and an absolute terror of failing. I started small, holiday baking for neighbors, then funeral receptions, then a wedding for a cousin who gave me $200 and a bottle of Riesling and changed my entire life by telling everyone she knew. I built an event catering business out of that wedding, and the one that followed, and the 30 that followed that. I named it after the bay where my husband proposed. Kempenfelt Catering, and I ran it for 26 years. I retired 4 years ago and sold the day-to-day operations to my head chef, a woman named Bev, who had worked beside me for 11 years and who runs it now the way I would want it run. Bev called me on a Wednesday afternoon 3 days before Christmas. Teddie, she said, this is a bit awkward. I knew, even before she said the address, what she was about to tell me. A booking had come in, 28 people, Christmas dinner, full service. From Mr. Raymond at my address. The name on the property didn't match the name on the booking. She'd held it pending confirmation, same as the firm always did for large private events, because the policy I had written 20 years ago was clear. For events above 20 covers, the owner of record for the property signs the service release in person. It closes out the damage deposit and protects the firm. It was a rule I made after a particularly unpleasant incident in 2003 involving a lake house and a man who did not own it. My son-in-law had given them my address and had signed as the property owner. The property, the county record said, belonged to one Theodora Eileen Marsh. Bev, I said, confirm the booking. A pause. You're sure? 28 covers, full service. And Bev, I'd like you to run this one yourself, on site, personally. Another pause, a little longer. It's your address, Teddie. It is, I said. I'd like the service release presented at the table during dinner. The usual procedure. Out loud so the table can hear. She understood far more than I said. The usual procedure, she said. Of course, and Bev. Yes, the rule about the owner of record. You don't bend it. I never have, she said. You taught me that. I almost said something sentimental. Instead, I just thanked her and let her go. The day before Christmas, I stopped by the kitchen, force of habit. Bev was prepping the mise en place for 28, the standing rib roast I'd requested instead of turkey, because this family had eaten turkey at my table every Christmas for 30 years, and I thought the last one they ate in my house should be something worth remembering. She walked me through the menu. Roasted beets, a potato gratin that had been mine before it was hers, Parker house rolls, the cranberry sauce with orange peel that my daughter had always asked for by name. By name. Until this year. I drove home and I looked at my sunroom, at the small space I had happily made my own these 6 years, and I thought about the fact that I had never once in that time resented the arrangement. I had genuinely, sincerely wanted them to be comfortable. I had wanted my grandchildren to grow up in a house with a yard and a garden shed and a cedar tree that was bigger than anyone planned. Fear explains people. It doesn't excuse documents. Christmas morning, I came into the main house before anyone else was up. Habit again, or maybe something else. Wanting to be in the rooms a moment before they changed. The dining table had been laid with the good cloth, the set of dishes that were mine, the silver candlesticks my husband and I received at our wedding. I stood in the dining room and felt the house around me, the way you feel a thing that has been yours a long time. I heard my son-in-law in the kitchen. He was on the phone, low and quick. I caught 2 words, after dinner. He didn't hear me in the hall. Guests arrived from 11. By noon, the house was warm and full. 28 people, Raymond's brother's family, and his cousins from Kitchener, my sister from Sudbury, in a burgundy sweater I'd never seen, a few people I recognized from my daughter's life, and a few I didn't. Bev's team moved through it all in their blacks, setting things on the sideboard with the kind of quiet efficiency that takes years to build. My grandchildren found me by the front door. Oliver had grown 2 inches since Thanksgiving, and Maisie had recently lost a tooth. She showed me immediately. I kept them close for a few minutes. I held on longer than they knew. My son-in-law kept glancing at an envelope, sitting face down beside them board near the kitchen door. He thought I hadn't noticed it. My sister touched my arm when she came in. "You look wonderful, Teddie," she said, the way people say it when they mean something else. "I feel wonderful," I said. Dinner was served at 1. The rib roast was, as Bev had promised, worth remembering. The table noise was the good kind. 28 people finding each other again over food, the sound of a house doing what a house is for. I sat at my end of the table and ate and smiled and said very little, and I felt the small certain weight of Gwen's envelope in my cardigan pocket, where I'd put it that morning, along with the folded copy of the deed and the screenshots printed on 2 sheets of plain paper. At 1:45, my son-in-law tapped his water glass with a knife. The table settled. "Before we get to dessert," he said, warm and measured, "I wanted to take a moment. As a family." He glanced toward my daughter, who was already leaning in with the particular expression she'd been wearing all day. Soft, sad, prepared. "We've all noticed that Teddie's had a harder year, the surgery. Being on her own out there in the sunroom." He paused. "We love you. We just want what's best for you." My sister set down her fork, right on cue. "It comes from love, Teddie," she said. Her voice had that practiced gravity in it. "We're all a little worried." My daughter rose from her chair. She reached into a tote bag I'd watched her carry all day and placed a glossy brochure on the white tablecloth. Lakeview Seniors Residence, comfort, community, and care in Barry's finest setting, smiling strangers around a jigsaw puzzle. She turned it so the table could read it. "We've done some research," she said. "There are wonderful options, and we think it's time to think about the future of the house." Her voice caught, "Just so. For the children's sake." Raymond picked up the envelope from the sideboard. He carried it to my end of the table with the careful tenderness of a man certain he is doing the right thing. "It's just a transfer," he said. He placed it beside my water glass and crouched a little so we were eye level, so the room could see how kind he was being. "It puts the house in our names, so you don't have to worry about any of it. We take care of everything. You just rest." I looked at the envelope. A quitclaim deed, I knew without opening it. I could have told you the clauses. I looked up at the 26 faces watching me. Some of them uncertain. Some performing certainty they didn't quite feel. Some of them genuinely confused about what was happening at the table they'd sat down to for dinner. And I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger. A kind of deep, slow peace, the specific peace of a person who has finally decided to take up exactly as much space as they occupy. I said, "Before I look at anything, I believe the caterer has a release to sign." "Don't they, Bev?" Bev stepped forward from the kitchen doorway. She crossed the room with her clipboard, unhurried, professional, exactly as I'd asked her to be. My apologies for the interruption, she said to the table. Company policy. For any event over 20 covers, the property owner of record signs our liability release before we close out the evening. It clears the damage deposit and formally closes the service file. My son-in-law straightened. I booked it. I signed everything. You did call it in, Bev said pleasantly. She turned a page on the clipboard. But the booking flagged a discrepancy with the county property record, so the release requires the registered owner. She read off the form, clear enough for the table to follow. Registered owner of this property, Theodora Eileen Marsh. Sole owner. The word sole landed like a stone into still water. A fork went still at the far end. My sister's smile froze somewhere in the middle of its ascent. Raymond opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The records are outdated, he said. We've been here 6 years. It's practically. I opened my cardigan pocket. I placed the notarized copy of the deed on the white tablecloth. 1 page, county stamp. 1 name on the grantee line, printed there 31 years ago and never changed. It isn't outdated, I said. Quiet. Just regular indoor quiet. And it isn't a mistake. 28 people leaned in. I stood up. I didn't need to. I wanted to be at standing height when I said the rest. You told everyone Christmas was at my house, I said to my daughter. You had it all arranged. You just forgot to arrange it with me. She started to speak. I went on, the same quiet. You invited 28 people into my house. I let it sit. You forgot to invite the one who owns it. Her eyes filled. The performing kind, the kind with good timing. How can you do this at Christmas, in front of everyone, in front of the children? I read the plan, I said. The one you posted to the wrong chat. I looked at the table. After dinner, Aunt Sharon opens. Keep it gentle, keep it sad. She won't want a scene in front of the grandkids. Raymond has the documents ready. I looked at her steadily. I have a copy. Silence. I'm 67 years old, I said. I had a knee replaced in October. I am not confused. I am not frightened, and I am no one's unsigned document. Someone at Raymond's end of the table put a phone face down. 2 of his cousins exchanged a look. My son-in-law said, too loudly. After everything we've done, you've lived here for 6 years, I said. Rent-free. I paid the taxes every December. I paid the insurance. I never asked you once for $1. I kept my voice even. I did that because I love my daughter, and I love those children, and I wanted you to have room. Not because I'd forgotten whose name was on the deed. My sister tried. I only said what I was asked to. I know what you were asked, I said. I didn't look at her again. I nodded toward the front hallway. Gwen had been standing there since 12:30 in a dark coat, holding an envelope of her own. She walked in and offered it to my son-in-law with the even courtesy of a woman who has been doing this for many years. Proper written notice of termination of occupancy, she said. Under the Residential Tenancies Act, 60 days, lawful notice, all in order. He took it because his hand moved before his brain did. There's also the matter of the service deposit, Bev said almost gently, $4,200. You signed the booking liability personally, Mr. Raymond, under your own name. That one's yours to settle. The math of it. Numbers sitting on a table, not caring about tears or tone, or the brochure still lying open between the rolls and the cranberry sauce. The room had gone so still I could hear the furnace. I bent down to my grandchildren, who were at the corner of the table watching with wide eyes that I wanted very much not to frighten. This has nothing to do with you two, I told them. Not one bit of it. I love you to the moon, and I will see you very soon. That's a promise. Maisie put her arms around my neck. Oliver, 10 years old and working very hard to be steady about it, nodded once in that serious way he has. I straightened and spoke to the table. The dinner's all paid for, I said. Every bit. Please sit. Eat. The roast is the best I've had in 3 counties, and I spent 30 years in this business, so I know what I'm talking about. One of Raymond's cousins laughed. The real kind, startled out of him. I thanked Bev at the door and squeezed her hand. She'd protected my name without being asked to. I hope she knows how rare that is. Then I turned once more to the room. Merry Christmas, I said. I'm in the sunroom if anyone needs me. I put on my coat. I walked out the front door into the December afternoon, into the specific cold and bright of a Canadian winter that has never once failed to feel like home. They were gone in 53 days. 2 days before Gwen would have filed. They found a rental in the south end of the city, and I heard through Oliver, in the careful sideways way that children report on things they don't fully understand, that his mum had cried a lot in January and his dad had been very quiet. I understood both of those things. Raymond settled the deposit in 2 payments. My sister called in February, once to apologize, which she did adequately, and once 2 weeks later to ask whether I'd considered leaving her something in the will. I told her I had not. I haven't heard from her since, and I find I sleep just fine. The house went into trust within the week, the same trust Gwen and I had drawn up before Christmas. It's held for Maisie and Oliver until they're each 25. I live in my sunroom because I love my sunroom. I have my own entrance and my own bath and a window that looks out over the cedar tree, and on good mornings I can see the garden my husband started and that I've been failing magnificently at ever since. My daughter and I speak now, carefully, in the way of people who are rebuilding something they let fall. She has never quite said she was sorry, but she said once that she'd been frightened for a long time and that she'd made it someone else's problem, and I thought that was honest enough to work with. I still do Christmas. I want you to know that. Last year I made dinner for 9 people in my own space. A proper table set with a good cloth, the Parker House rolls, the rib roast again because it was that good. Maisie sat beside me and asked approximately 40 questions about gravy. Oliver carved very seriously and not particularly well, and was enormously proud of it. I didn't stop being family. I stopped being taken for granted, which is a different thing, though I understand why people confuse the two. My husband used to say, a house is just a building until someone decides to defend it. I used to think he was talking about home insurance. Now I know he meant something else entirely. If this story gave you something, a word for a feeling you've been carrying, a reminder that quiet is not the same as absent, pass it to someone who needs to hear it today.